Mic check 1 2, it's the Y2K collector, and there is definitely a difference between a game that is popular and a game that we would consider a cult classic. Now, I first want to say that the term cult classic is a very subjective term. And I think a lot of times within the gaming community, when we think about a game that's considered a cult classic, we might consider that to be a game that's rare. We might consider that to be a game that's expensive. We might to consider that to be a game that is really fun, that has really good graphics, maybe some really good music. Maybe it's a game that includes iconic characters that have defined a generation in gaming. So there's a lot of things that you can attach to something that would be a cult classic. And it's for that reason that I say that that term is quite subjective. However, I do think that there is somewhat of an objective difference between a game that is popular versus a game that would be considered a cult classic. And sometimes the two are the same, but a lot of times they are not. And I think when we talk about games that are like filler versus killer or fluff versus shovelware, I think a lot of times the lines kind of get blurred when trying to decipher which games fall into which categories. Now, I'm making this video because yesterday I came out with a video talking about things that most collectors won't tell you about their collection. And I highlighted the fact that a lot of times in a lot of these large collections, they're actually made up of a lot of fluff, a lot of shovelware, a lot of games that just are not, fun, games that aren't desirable, and games that no one really wants to play. And I started talking about a section of games that I call filler games. And in that section, I had pointed to Dark Souls. And a lot of people took exception to me calling Dark Souls a filler game. I don't know why. I didn't say that it was shovelware, and I didn't say that it was fluff. I said that it's filler. And in my opinion, I do think Dark Souls is filler. And here's the thing about filler. And we've seen this happen a lot of times. There are a ton of games that many would consider filler, which over time become cult classics or rare gems or games that we would consider highly desirable. And that's because there are a lot of outside factors that can impact the perceived value of many of the games that we have in our collection. We've seen this happen many times, and we've actually recently seen it happen with the Xbox 360. There were a ton of games on the Xbox 360 that no one really cared for, but the second we were told that the store was going to be closing, a lot of these games shot up in value. One I can think of right off the top of my head is Knight's Contract. That's a very basic action-adventure game on the 360, which wound up shooting up in value because there was a perceived change in value in the minds of video game collectors and 360 collectors. The same thing happened with Fist of the North Star Ken's Rage 2. That was a game that was roughly $35 to $40, and that game shot all the way up to $250 and is now going to be considered probably for the rest of time to be one of the more rare games on the 360. But there's a lot of factors that go into those price changes, and a lot of factors that go into the paradigm shifts that change how we perceive the value of a lot of these games. So when it comes to a game like Dark Souls or even Modern Warfare, yes, when these games released, they were extremely popular and they helped to define a genre in gaming. But once their wave of fame passed and once they were no longer really being played, the desire to go back and revisit these games outside of nostalgia's sake isn't really there, wasn't really there, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think a lot of this is reflected in the price of these games. Price isn't everything, and price does not tell us everything, but price is a very good indicator of the objective value that the community as a whole places on a lot of these games. Now, you could say, hey, prices are manipulated. You could say, hey, YouTubers cause prices of certain games to go up or go down. But I think that in some cases, yes, that may be true, but in my opinion, I think the only thing that YouTubers do is they highlight certain games. They create awareness around certain games, and then it's up to the community to determine whether a game is going to be rare or not. I've seen so many YouTube videos with so many YouTubers talking about games that are $5, $10 games. And I've seen them, I mean, years ago, I've seen certain games get promoted. Oh, you need to pick up this game because it's going to be really, really rare in 2 years. And those games are still sitting on the shelf for $5. So I think there is a certain amount of influence that the internet can have on the perceived value of games. However, I think the one thing that the internet and YouTube does more than anything else is they just highlight games that people probably were never aware of. And who knows, had more people been aware of those games, the price and the value for those games probably would have been higher altogether. But most people who buy and play video games aren't collectors. They're not people who go and research what new games to buy. Most people who play video games are casual consumers of video games, and they're pretty much just going to buy the games that they see on the shelf at their nearest Best Buy or Walmart. They're not going to retro game stores. They're not shopping on eBay. They're not hitting up forums. They're not watching YouTube videos to determine the best game in each genre or category of games. And so I think that's what the internet did for a lot of the casual game collectors, or maybe the casual game players. It highlighted games that they had probably never heard of before, and then that's what sparked the interest. So when I look at a game like Dark Souls, I say, yes, this is still a very cool game. Definitely a lot of great gameplay and was extremely popular, but the cult classic status that it has in the PS3 library doesn't match a game like Azura's Wrath, which probably wasn't as popular. Maybe not as many people knew about it. And this is not a crazy expensive game, but it's definitely a game that I think a lot of uh, gamers who are interested in the beat 'em up genre, who are interested in fun graphics, who like that style of gameplay, it's definitely going to be something that they gravitate towards, and it's going to be something that folks who enjoy the 360 are going to want to experience years to come. So I'm interested to know what you guys think about this topic. Do you think that there's any truth in my thought process or opinion here? Or do you think that, if it was popular once, then it's a cult classic? Or do you think price doesn't have any bearing? Do you think desirability has any bearing? Or do you agree that it's a number of factors that make a game a cult classic? I'm interested to know your thoughts. Before I go, I did just want to say that GameStop has officially announced its retro stores. So if you're interested in trying to figure out which GameStop does sell retro games near you, you can now go to their website, punch in your zip code, and it will show you which retro stores are near you, making it easier for you to go in and pick up some more of those retro games. Unfortunately, there's probably going to be a bunch of stores that still only carry PS3 or 360. I doubt you'll walk into these stores and run into a bunch of NES and Game Boy games, but I'm sure as time goes on, they'll probably beef up that section of their stores a bit more to have more offerings for customers. But let me know what you think about that as well. Let me know if you've punched in your zip code to see if there are any retro stores near you. It's the Y2K Collector. I will catch you in the next video. Take it easy.